Hey, welcome back to another Epidose of these people that just eat meat and won't stop talking about it. Today, I have a special guest. I have Emily Ruiz with us. She's a carnivore coach under MeatRx, and she's came on today to tell her story. So, how did you get started, and what led you to carnivore?
So, my dad went keto a few years ago, and shortly after that, my fiance and I got engaged. And honestly, my motivation at first was weight loss, and I was like, if I feel better, I feel better, but I really just wanted to lose some weight, um, for the wedding and everything. And so I went keto and I dropped quite a bit of weight, probably 40 pounds over 8 months or so. I'm a slow loser. And but I didn't feel better though, right? I still felt I had tons of inflammation. I've had chronic pain since I was 14. So I still had tons of inflammation, really fatigued muscles. Um, And fast forward a few months, we're married, we're pregnant with my daughter, who's now 11 months old, Matea. She's the best. And mid-pregnancy, my body just wanted meat. So carnivore pregnancy is kind of my niche since I've been there. And I found someone online. I found somebody on Instagram, and I was like, wow, this person is only eating, meat, eggs, and dairy. I was like, this can't be a thing. Lo and behold, it is a thing. It's a
It's a
big
thing.
thing.
Yeah.
It's a big thing. Yes. And so I started reading about carnivore and hearing all these people's success stories and listening to Sean and listening to Dr. Barry. And I already trusted, Dr. Barry so much from the keto space. And then I found Sean, and he's, no nonsense, tells you like it is, but he's also very um in it to help people.
Oh
And
yeah.
so I was like, this just sounds really real. These people seem genuine, and this is what my body like naturally wants during pregnancy. And so my husband and I just went cold turkey straight into carnivore,
Wow.
partially through my pregnancy. And it was fantastic. So I hadn't exercised in a long time, because of my chronic pain, and which later was diagnosed as undifferentiated connective tissue disease.
Mm.
So mid-pregnancy, I had enough energy and my inflammation had gone down enough that I started to exercise mid-pregnancy. So I was able to start doing things like squats, which usually I can't do them because they hurt my hips so bad.
Mm.
I was able to do squats and, um, lift a few weights, not heavy weights, the granny weights, but I was able to start exercising and walking, and getting out. And so it was really fantastic, And then the proof was in the pudding when my daughter was born, so healthy and so strong. So that's what led me to carnivore. I started trying to lose weight on keto, and then I was like, I was sick of worrying about weight, but I was like, I just feel absolutely terrible. And so I gave carnivore a shot, and here we are.
Yeah, I started on keto as well, and I was definitely doing better. I had arthritis really bad, and
Yeah.
it quickly resolved, and I was feeling better. But I found myself just wanting to eat meat, and that's kind of when I discovered that there was all these people out there that were already doing it, and then of course I met Sean and stuff like that. So it all took off from there. Yeah. So a lot of people come to carnivore via keto. It seems like the two major paths are either keto or veganism. It's, they
Isn't it though? And isn't that funny? Yeah, I think just because of some of my autoimmune system and stuff, or my autoimmune symptoms
Yeah.
and things. I think keto's great for a lot of people, and it's certainly a large step. Um, but I just think I needed the extra tier. So carnivore sometimes feels like next level keto. It's like for some of it's a natural progression. You get to X
Sure.
point and you're like, but can I be better? You know?
Right. Yeah, I got this far. What more can I do? And it's like
Right.
that. It's like a lot of people, they go and they go exercise so they can eat more. But when you get on the other side of it, you realize if you eat right, you want to exercise, right? And you start doing stuff that you never did before. And then
Right.
you get curious, like, how much more can I do? This is great. So what do you typically eat in a day?
Well, so I just got a meter. I got the 406 Connect, the blood glucose and ketone meter. Something was a little off, and I tracked for so long. Like after a while, you quit tracking, and once I came to carnivore, I had quit tracking, and you get in your groove. But something was a little off. My inflammation came back up a little, so I grabbed a meter. And it turns out my sugars were just a few points higher than normal. And, I was in a very low level ketosis. And although ketosis isn't the point of all carnivore, it's a good tool for me and my autoimmune. And so it was a sign to me that I needed to bump my fat back up. So right now I'm at about 80% fat, 20% protein, and it just seems to work for me. So for breakfast, I'll have, probably 6 egg yolks with 2 tablespoons of butter and maybe an ounce of cheese, maybe not. And then I have, like a butter coffee with cream. And then I don't eat again until dinner. And dinner is just whatever meats, came out of the freezer and went to the grill. So I don't really enjoy chicken. So we don't eat chicken much. And it's just because I never ate it much as a kid.
Mm.
And chicken's fine. It just doesn't give me the satiety. And I just never ate it as a kid. So it's usually always beef. If it's not beef, it's pork chops, the fattiest pork chops we can find. And eat that with butter, and that's what I eat. And so then the butter through the day and the egg yolks and stuff keep my fat where it needs to be. And I'll eat bacon too every now and then. I don't do as well with pork fat as I do with beef fat, so I have to limit my pork fat.
Yeah, I know the same thing. I Chicken tastes all right, but it's not as satiating. I think
Right.
it's just so lean. The chicken, by the time we get the chicken, it's so lean. And then I don't know, there's something about beef in particular. And I like pork, but I notice I don't feel as well if I eat a lot of pork. So I do eat it sometimes. So I have
Right. I
both.
definitely, and sometimes it's more cost efficient, because I don't want to eat like I have round every day. So I want to buy good beef. So I buy good beef and then I throw some pork chops in, and that mitigates the cost for me. One of our local stores, Meyer, has pork sales a lot. So I'll get a big pork shoulder butt, or I'll get some pork chops. And it's nice just to switch stuff up. We do eat a lot of ground beef. We do eat a lot of ground beef too. Usually we'll fry up quite a few pounds at a time and keep that for my husband and I's lunch through the week.
Great. So you're basically eating twice a day most of the time. You get a
Right,
good breakfast in and then you eat again at dinner. So
right.
and
I
that
call
just
it break
came,
fast because
yeah,
you're breaking your fast, but I eat around lunch. So if I say breakfast or lunch, I'm usually talking about just my first
late.
meal of the
Yeah.
day.
So and you just came to that rhythm naturally, or
Yeah, I think especially if I eat too lean, I get hungrier.
hmm,
And my husband, like with a lot of guys, he does fine, lean or high fat. It doesn't bother him much. As a woman, if I eat too lean, I I just get bad symptoms. Sometimes I feel like hypoglycemic, like hangry.
Sure.
And so when I up my fat up to, 75, 80%, I'm too full to eat more than twice a day. And so I just naturally fell into a twice a day rhythm. Yeah.
Yeah, that seems to be the key is, some people they just start eating meat and never look back. But if you've got any sort of, you're not getting to the goals you want or you don't feel quite right, then it's a matter of just figuring out how much protein and how much fat you need.
Right. Sometimes you just gotta tweak it. And there was a period where, I felt fine eating as lean as I was. And periodically you just gotta check in with yourself and say, what am I eating? How am I feeling? For sure.
So what happens when you tell people that you just eat meat? How
Oh,
did people around you take it?
um, a myriad. My dad is all for it. He was obviously keto to begin with, and he's one of those guys that's like, dirty keto isn't a real thing. Like, you have to do it super clean or it's not keto. Like, he's the, biggest proponent against seed oils and starch and sugar. So, he loves it. He doesn't care at all. My grandma has learned to deal with it. She's frustrated probably making Friday night family dinner because we have um, a vegan, a keto, and a carnivore. And she had always done Weight Watchers. And so we're like coming from four totally different points. But
Right.
she supports it, but she's also in the generation where meat and butter weren't demonized. So
Yeah, that's
my
good.
grandparents fully support me. I have, you know, maybe I have an aunt that's particularly concerned, but we haven't had the time to sit down and for me to, plead my case and state the facts. So generally it's pretty good. I got my mother-in-law converted to carnivore. My dad is
Very nice.
almost there. He's at the really high meat end of like the ketovore spectrum. And so I don't get too much backlash, but I also don't know, you know, what are they going to say? I don't get too much backlash from the family because I have a supportive family and I don't care what anybody else says.
Right. So when you're at the supermarket and you're putting a bunch of meat in your shopping cart and you look around at other people and they've got Fruit Loops and bread and English
Yeah,
muffins and oatmeal.
it's such a struggle. I talk to my husband about this and I'm like, do you feel like a shopping cart snob now? Because like I don't I don't want to feel like a snob. Like, I'm just genuinely concerned for these people's health, especially,
Yeah.
being a mother now. I'm like, they've got 3 kids and the entire cart is Pepsi and Cheetos and
Right.
Gushers. And like, yeah, yeah, definitely you walk around or you see somebody that's already sick, on oxygen. And
Right.
it's just like fortified breakfast cereal and skim milk. And you're just sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that
Sometimes we
too.
get caught in this space where all this stuff has been like drilled into our brains and we know what real health is. And sometimes we forget that it's still a foreign concept to everyone else. So sometimes we think like, oh, how could you be eating that? But like, weren't we all at one point, Sometimes I'm so used to eating carnivore. We had some people over for dinner one time, and I told my husband, I was like, what do people eat? I don't know. I don't know what to make for a side because I don't remember what people eat. Isn't
Yeah.
it funny?
Justin likes to tell the stories over at somebody's house and they had lasagna. They were serving lasagna and he couldn't remember what lasagna was called.
Isn't that funny? I know.
Yeah.
It's like that sometimes, though. We get so immersed, especially when you're new, you just surround yourself with like meat and suet and carnivores and
Yeah.
carnivores and carnivores. And it's like you've got Sean and Kelly Hogan and Charles Washington and
Yeah.
Ken Berry. And you're just like, you're so immersed that like after a while you're like, what was my old life?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I like to say we all suffered from bad information, right?
definitely.
that's how we all got there.
For
And then
most people, it's totally innocent.
it's almost like living in a different world once you get to the other side and you get used to what you're doing. And then you realize that the bulk of what other people eat is not what you eat. Like you said, you see a shopping cart and it's got soda and chips and cereal and all
Right,
kinds of stuff, peanut butter and jelly and all the usual stuff we used to eat,
right.
the staples, the corn. We were just talking about the corn belt. I was watching this movie
Yeah,
and they're going to town on these corn cobs, and I'm just
yeah.
like, oof.
So once a year, so my family grows, my grandpa and grandma, they would put corn out every year and enough to share with everybody. And it was great. And every summer, at least once, but usually at least 3 times, we would have dinner, right? And the only thing we ate was corn. So each person's like, downing, each adult's downing, 6, 8 ears of corn,
Right,
and then the kids are eating a couple. And it was great. And like it fills me with nostalgia. But knowing what I know now, you know, it's not optimal. And the worst thing about the shopping cart thing and stuff is that a lot of people are really trying. Like I see a young mom or a young dad, or anybody, an older person, and you see people trying to be healthy. So I see people with like, you know, plant these things that are marketed as healthy. They've got plant-based granola bars and they've
yeah,
got low-fat dressing and they have 1 pack of ground beef and just super sugary fruits and all this stuff. And you see them trying, right? Because to the mainstream, that looks like such a healthy carb, but they're
right,
obviously still, still struggling. And so I feel really bad when I see people, because that's what most of us have done is we try really hard for our family. You wouldn't feed your kids something that wasn't good for them on purpose. So
right,
it breaks my heart when I see people with like protein pancakes and stuff like that. And it's just, chemical garbage,
right,
nonsense.
right. Or some inferior plant-based meat substitute, or
Right. That's not
yeah,
me. You don't see me making broccoli out of a ribeye. I don't know why we have to make vegetable steaks and stuff because I'm not trying to turn meat into a vegetable.
right.
You're clearly missing something that we're not missing.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons too why people do better on carnivore than keto. At least some people. It's
Yeah.
just you don't have a bunch of substitute foods. You're not making fake bread. You're not eating fat
Yes.
bombs, and you don't see all the other sweeteners, the non-caloric sweeteners like you do in keto.
Yeah, and I host so on Mondays at MeterX, I host an addiction recovery group.
Oh,
I'm a fellow addiction survivor. So we talk about anything from drugs and alcohol to addictions to behaviors and obviously sugars and carbs. And one of the things that comes up frequently is the thing about keto for a true eating addict, food addict, sugar carb addict, or emotional eater, right? Is there's still all those things. Yeah, you maybe could make a mug cake and be okay, but like a lot of people are then going to have three. So
hmm,
they say, okay, monk fruit is legal and almond flour is legal. And not only does keto end up really high oxalate, but it still leaves all these things that we can binge on. And so we bring these unhealthy addiction habits
right,
from our standard diet into our keto diet. And on carnivore, we aim to, really change our relationship with food and let it go. That's why I feel like keto is the intro to carnivore for some people. Some
right,
people can manage keto real well. My dad does fantastic, but he also eats real clean. I worry about his oxalates, but whatever,
sure,
or just his anti-nutrients, but whatever.
right,
Um, but you can do really good. But for some people, they bring those carbs down and they start to see the positive changes and positive effects. And then at some point, what I hear from so many people in the meeting is, but I was still binging, right? But I was still all day, I was thinking, how many carbs do I have left and how can I fill them up? And if I take
Mhm.
one bite out of a sugar cream pie, you know, how many macros is that? And so they still were having these highly detrimental addictive behaviors. And carnivore just truly, truly is, a godsend for people like that. It's a paradise of the mind to be free from those thoughts.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. When you're preoccupied with even something that would seem innocuous, like getting your macros in order,
Yeah.
it's a step into the crazy world that you just want to be free of for sure. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I remember like, now keto did help with my satiety. I can't knock it. I mean, I lost weight and it helped with my satiety. I think maybe the anti-nutrients were a problem for me, having all
Yeah.
the autoimmune stuff, but it did help my satiety. So before keto and carnivore, I was so hungry all the time, Tom. I thought something was wrong with me. Like I was so freaking hungry all the time. My husband and I, when we would order pizza, we didn't order a pizza. It was like we ordered two pizzas and there was a his and a hers pizza.
Oh,
And
wow.
that's how I'm serious. And um, it's crazy. And I was so hungry that I had forgotten what it felt like to truly feel satiated, not just full. Because there were times, even when my stomach was full, my body wanted more food. And so for me, I didn't struggle with like binging or anything, but for me, my body just knew it didn't have the nutrients it needed. So 2 hours later, as soon as I got an inch of space, I was ready to keep feeding it. And so one of the best benefits for me is the pain relief and the not being so hungry you think you're out of your mind. Definitely.
I went through that myself because, say, 15 years ago, I'm in the gym working out and I'm drinking the protein shakes, trying to eat right, and, nothing but like multigrain breads and
Right.
basmati rice and all that. And the more I worked out, the hungrier I got, and I could not eat enough. My digestion was always off. I'd be trying to work out, and my stomach didn't feel right all the time. It felt like there was something sloshing around in there, made me queasy, and it was miserable, and then eventually my arthritis got so bad I had to stop going to the gym, you know.
Yeah.
So then after suffering all that, it took a couple weeks on keto for my arthritis to go away. It was amazing.
That
So
is so quick. That is so awesome. My husband's gonna hate me when he sees this for sharing, but it's true and people need to hear it. So one of his biggest benefits, and I'm so lucky to have, a carnivore husband too. I don't know what I would do if I had to sit next to someone eating Doritos all day. It would be too hard.
that's what
But
goes on in my house. So,
well, props to you. That would be difficult. But so he had the worst digestive problems you could imagine. I mean, he could be gone to the bathroom for an hour, you know, and like, and that was normal. And his stomach hurt all the time. Every night his stomach hurt. And he had to take an hour-long bathroom trip, you know, not to mention, um, his his gas was foul and often. So I said he's gonna hate me, but it's no more.
these
Love
are
you, babe.
these are common stories on these videos. So
So common, aren't they? And so now, I mean, we're like a flatulence-free household, and
right,
that's just being real. People
yeah.
say this or that. That's just me being real. Okay, we all do it. But literally, it doesn't happen anymore. And digestion is so easy. So that's been a life changer for us too, for sure.
Yeah, in that transition to keto, I noticed my digestion was a lot better. But it wasn't until I gave up the spinach, the cauliflower, and the coconut oil that things were really good. Like I still would get
Right.
heartburn. The spinach still was just kind of rough on the digestive tract. And then
Right.
when I finally made that plunge and I I went carnivore, and I was like, well, I still got some of this keto stuff laying around. What if I went back to keto for a month just for comparison?
Right.
And I made it like a week maybe. And then I was like, there's no way this is completely inferior
Can't
to
do it.
just eating meat, at least for me. So I mean, I know some people out there do really well on keto. They hit all their goals and they feel
Yeah, and
great.
more power to them.
Sure.
Right. Right. We're just not those people. So I did have one bad cheat experience and I can share. It wasn't so much a cheat. I mean, it was, but it wasn't like, oh, an indulgent cheat or like a way to get more stuff in. We were moving houses and hadn't prepared to not have a stove for a few weeks. My husband, he worked so hard for us and he was at work what felt like a month straight while we were moving. And the baby was cutting all four of her top teeth at the same
Oh,
time.
wow.
And so we're working on the house. And of course, our families, got right in the trenches with us. But I could not put the baby down. No one else could hold her. It was madness. I didn't have a stove. I'm responsible for his stomach, her stomach, my stomach. It was madness. And so for a week or two, I was like, I'll be fine, right? I've been carnivore so long, like I'll be fine. And so we ate out and me now is kicking me. Like all you have to do is, order carnivore stuff. But I didn't, I'd have an egg McMuffin or whatever. I never again. It was the worst decision I ever made. I ended up with such a bad flare of my joint inflammation. I had to go back to the rheumatologist. And I know, like, I don't care if carnivores hate on me. Sometimes medicine is necessary. Yes, the medical community, um, we've been failed as a whole, but sometimes it's necessary. And I had
Sure.
such a bad flare that I couldn't take care of my family. So I had to call the rheumatologist and I had to go on a couple weeks of prednisone. We kept it as short as we could, to
Yeah.
like a 2-week burst. But I had to do some prednisone to clear it up. And it was like, that was my last straw. I was like, it's not worth it. So I got right back to it. And then I bumped my fat up and, I feel great again.
Yeah. I think we
Or
all have
learning
a,
experience.
yeah, we all have a story like that. We joke about it.
Yeah.
It's your kid's birthday and then you have a piece of cake with them, or you go visit some friends and made a special
Yeah.
dessert for you or whatever it is. Yeah, everybody
Right.
does it at least once
Right.
or 10
Oh,
times.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Right. And some people can handle more than others. My
sure.
husband is able to eat what he wants at Christmas and Thanksgiving and like not skip a beat. It does kick his cravings back up.
Mm,
But since he works and I stay home, I kind of get control of like our menu, like
right.
in our house.
Hmm.
So we don't keep stuff in the house. So one cheat day doesn't lead to more for him because
Yeah.
like I said, I make, the food, but he's able to do that and not skip a beat. But now if he does that for more than a few days, his knees swell back up immediately and
Mm.
his snoring and his sleep apnea come back immediately, even before he starts to gain weight back. It's so weird. Like I always thought maybe
I
it was the
know.
weight on his chest and he was never that large. But even before he gains the weight back, he will start to snore and stop breathing in his sleep again. And I'll elbow him and be like, you remember those McChickens? I need you to I need you to scoot over, stop it. Because he's
Yeah, you're
snoring
not the
again. So
first to mention that.
yeah. So he's definitely strict carnivore now too. Enough elbows in the side for snoring will do that to you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's interesting because when they talk about snoring or sleep apnea and they explain the physiology, you think it's the weight or there's something going on there that that has to do with their weight, but you're not the first person to point out that people will go back to snoring when they go off the diet before they gain the weight back. So there's a whole other
Yes.
mechanism in there at play that we
That
don't
we're not
understand.
that we're
Yeah.
not aware of.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then that
It's so true.
explains
And
too,
sometimes after you go carnivore,
I was
go
just going
ahead.
to say some really big people never snore, no matter how big they are, they just don't snore. So so what's going on there, you know?
Isn't that bizarre? Now I know a lot of it has to do with your airway,
Mhm.
you know, your airway. And so you can have problems up here, or you can have problems like in the mouth. There's a lot of like specialty, I'm sure it has a specialty name, but dentists almost, you know, a specialty dentist that works on opening up this airway. But I just think that, yeah, there has to be a lot of mechanisms that we're not aware of yet. And it's funny, once you've been carnivore a while, things get better that you didn't know were sick. Like we realized that we didn't know what it was like to be well. You know, I got well in the middle of pregnancy when most people are like dying. You know, my husband and I went frog gigging 2 nights before my daughter was born, right?
Really?
I'm traipsing around at night. Oh yeah. It's we love to be outside, to adventure, to fish, to
Yeah.
forage. And so we were out and I've got this huge belly and I'm like traipsing around the pond with my husband and he's holding on to me so I can lean in, you know, and gig a frog. And so it's like we didn't even know, here I was pregnant, felt better than I ever had before. We don't know what it feels like to feel well until we felt well.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. It's just interesting. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
no,
love my frog gigging story.
yeah, that's a good story. You know, we talk about all the time
Yeah.
how not being well has been normalized, right? You know, it's like there's remedies
Yeah.
for every sort of indigestion, headache, joint pain. And then, you know,
Have a statin.
you mentioned you know, autoimmune reaction. I was an autoimmune sufferer myself, had arthritis, psoriasis, got psoriasis really bad. And then they have these very expensive class of drugs that they put you on for that, that it's tens of thousands of dollars a year. And they basically
Yeah.
reduce your immune system. They impair your immunity, which we're in the middle of an epidemic. So anybody on those drugs is probably at a disadvantage to staying healthy in an epidemic, you know? And it's like normal. It's like there's a medication for everything and it's just natural. It's just a part of getting older, or it's my genes, or it runs in the
Right.
family, or
It's my genes.
yeah,
Yeah. Or you hear people, I was born with, and you know, we all used to think this way. People say I was born with a slow metabolism.
right.
Like, but you were also born into cornflakes and biscuits and gravy, you know, which
For
I
sure.
was too. Like
Sure.
some biscuits and gravy. She's not alive to hear this, but my nanny, you made the best biscuits and gravy in the world, and the whole family knows it. But the thing is that we were just never taught. It's so funny in a few generations how we have lost the older generations, my grandparents, their parents, and grandparents understood things like natural health, right? They understood things like meat is fuel and plants are medicine, right? And they had a better idea that what you put in your body can affect its quality of output. And it feels like in a few short generations, science was hijacked by, you know, major corporations with personal interest and money to make. And then look how successful they've been at wiping all this out of out of our minds, right? This was all common knowledge that eggs are good, butter's good, meat's good, milk is good, right? Especially for kids.
Yeah.
And in a few generations, through this marketing, this propaganda, and these bought studies, They've completely hijacked our society so bad that we forget, I mean, everything that should just be, that's instinctual. It always feels like when you go carnivore, right? Like it feels like you've met, it's so weird to describe to non-carnivores, but it feels like you've met your most primal instincts and you've satisfied them. You know what I mean? It
Mm,
just feels right. You feel satiated to the bone. You've got what we call that carnivore zen. You're in the zone. You know, you're taking care of your family. You're getting what you need done. You've taken control of your own health. And it just really feels like a wolf going back to be a wolf in the sense that we've been domesticated away from what's good for us.
for
And it
sure.
feels like you're meeting your ancestry back. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think eating all these plants, all we're really doing is fighting our biology. And once you start eating meat and you get rid of the plants, your
For sure.
machinery just works right. Your brain just works right. You
Right.
feel so much better. Yeah.
And it's funny, then people say, well, but what about this and what about that? But the argument that they always overlook and fail to win is that almost none of the plants we eat today are what they were. Some of them didn't even exist, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're literally feeding your body. The nutrient content is zero. The oxalate, phytate, right? Your
Hmm.
anti-nutrient content is up here. We have killed all our soil. The nutrient content is zero. We've made all the fruit so big and sweet that it's a sugar bomb. So
Yeah.
you're right. Like my my great grandparents, they could eat an apple off the farm, right? And maybe it wasn't so bad, right? And it still had all these nutrients. You go into the supermarket right now and buy an apple, and you're buying, a little ball of pure
Fructose.
sugar,
Yeah.
pure fructose.
Yeah.
And so if I had access to the things that our ancestors ate long ago, maybe you could incorporate it in a stew or whatever. But the fact of the matter is, I don't trust the veggies and fruits that are out there. It's not consistent with what a human should eat anymore.
Well, and the archaeological record is clear right at the end of the Stone Age when the people in Anatolia started domesticating cattle and horses. They moved westward into Europe and they completely dominated over all the people that were just learning to plant grains. Because the people that were planting grains on the plains were sick and weakly. They're shorter.
Right,
Their brains were smaller. Their joints were diseased. Their teeth were
right,
rotten. And these guys that learned to domesticate cattle and take their food with them were thriving. They were bigger. They were stronger. They were smarter.
right.
They had more energy. So yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
the record's been laid out for us. We just have to look at it.
right. And sometimes it's just common sense. When your grandpa who ate bacon and eggs and beef every day, right,
Hmm.
and real butter and real
Hmm.
cream, when he's 95, my grandpa right now, he's going to be 79 in June. He shattered his pelvis a few years ago, completely fine. He goes out and wrangles cattle every single day at
Wow.
79 years old. I
Nice.
would pit him against a 20-year-old man, right? He's so strong. Um, I mean, just look around, right? Why doesn't he have clogged arteries? Like why doesn't he have heart disease?
Right.
Right? So you look around at these people and you say, oh yeah, well, grandma did. Right. But when you look at grandma's diet, she ate
Sweets.
crumpets, right?
Yeah.
So when we really look at our ancestors, it's just so funny to me how much common sense is missing. You realize how gullible you are
Yeah.
when we believe the stories on the news that say red meat causes cancer, and yet we eat what, 66% less red meat now? than we used to.
Yeah.
And yet our disease rates have skyrocketed. So
Right.
medical science has grown so much, right? We have the Da Vinci surgical robots. We have all this insane, new technology, and yet we still can't keep people alive. And if we keep them alive longer, they're in miserable condition. So
Right.
you might live to be 85 life, right, are going to be in a nursing home a lot of times.
Right.
And so the common sense is there when we can break away from believing everything we're told. The common sense is there. They're telling you everything to do, but they have been all these years, and we're just still health wise not in a better spot.
Right. Agreed 100%. That's why we do these videos to get the word out, right?
Right, that's right.
Yeah. So you want to tell people where they can reach you if they want to reach you?
Absolutely. So my niche, whatever, my thing is carnivore and trying to conceive. So pre-pregnancy, pregnancy, and postpartum, and then feeding a family, right? And feeding the children. So that's kind of my area of expertise, although I do have quite a bit of experience with addiction and with, a keto to carnivore transition. And so you can find me at meatrx.com. I'm available for coaching, and you can also find me on Instagram. My handle is, oh my goodness, I forget it.
I can,
I,
let's see. I should have
I
it here.
think,
Isn't it
yeah,
Coach Emily
I
Ruiz?
think it's Coach Emily Ruiz. I'm
Yeah.
so terrible. Yeah, okay. My handle is Coach Emily Ruiz. So
Yeah.
that's EMILYRUIZ.
All right. And I'll be sure and put that in the show notes for everybody.
Yeah,
If they want to get in touch with you, they can just go down below and look in the text
yeah.
there. So,
I've had
all
an
right.
awesome time chatting with you, Tom.
Oh, it was nice meeting you too. I'm glad. I think it was Justin that first recommended you, but I think we
Yeah,
know quite a few people in common by now. So I'm sure
definitely.
we'll get to talk some more. So, yeah. So I guess we'll wrap it up then. For everybody out there, leave us comments and make sure you're subscribed. Give us the old thumbs up. Let us know what topics you want to hear about next time. And until then, eat some meat, feel better. Whatever you do, don't fall down the carb hole.